For this part of the demonstration, I'm going to show you how easy it is to create a takeoff using Bidcon. I'm actually going to center this around 3 IFC models. We've got a federated model, courtesy of the advanced sample file in Revit. And if I step into transparent mode for a moment, you can see when I click on, for example, the structural model, we can see all of the elements of those that are highlighted. So let's go back into solid mode and stop highlighting anything. To show you very briefly using the Takeoff editor that I can have a whole host of Takeoff templates, and these determine exactly how the items are going to be, well, how the line items are going to be produced and associated with the objects in the model. We choose the kind of quantities, where we get the dimensions from. We also choose how items are merged together, so what information is used to merge those items together, so we don't have hundreds of lines of doors, for example. We know we only have a few different lines depending on the types. Okay, so I'm going to take off only selected items. I'm going to do that by holding down Control and selecting a few different IFC entities, and effectively it's selected 1300 or so items. Let's take off only the selected items. And Bidcon has created quantity posts. It's warned me about some items that couldn't be taken off because they've been modeled incorrectly. We can access those another time. But for now, I'll show you the link. So if I want to show you items that have been merged together, let's look at my piles. Step into transparent mode, and we can see those are below the surface. Same kind of thing for the pile caps and the floors. So we can see that the upper level floors have been merged together into one quantity. We'll price them together. We can split them by level if we wanted to. Look at my doors. I can see we've got 95 of a particular type over here, 63 of a particular type over here, and you get the picture. They're merged together to make it easier to cost, but this information carries its way through the IFC file, so when you're using it as a single source of information, it's all there. We'll find items that haven't been modeled. Say for example, let's take our floor again. So as this ground floor, for example, we might want the DPC quantified. We can manually access the information, the property information for that floor. Let's look at the dimensions. So we can see the perimeter, we can see the thickness, and we can see the area. So all of those built together will give us a good idea of the DPC needed. So using my Takeoff template, I've created a formula using those dimensions to get the right quantity, the right area of DPC needed, and I can manually add a line item. Let's call this DPC, give it a unit, meter squared. Let's move it up just below the floor so they're all together. But rather than entering the number in manually, I actually want to link to those quantities. Bidcon won't let you take an object off more than once because that causes duplication. So in this case, what we're going to do is, rather than create quantity posts, we're actually going to apply the quantities. So going from underneath the model, Very easy to see the floor. Hold down Control and drag the floor onto my DPC line item. Bidcon gives me the option to use a number of properties as the dimension information. I'm going to use my template, and there we go. We can see 1,829 meters squared of DPC is needed, and there we go. That DPC is linked to the floor. Okay. So that's one example of how we would create quantities for objects that haven't been modeled, but we can access the information from elsewhere. One other thing we might want to do is add model revisions. So if we take the structural model again, add a revision. I'm going to use one where a simple change has been made, but it's quite a vast change and it's had a knock-on effect. So let's import that model. So we're going to import only the structural model. If we take a look at all the items that are linked to it, they still remain linked, even though it's a different model. And we can run a comparison. I'm going to compare the two models, and we'll see that even though I stated there's been one small change, it's had quite a knock-on effect. So if I filter only for modified items, let's take a look at these pile caps, for example, and the modification to those, well, the only modification to those is the host. The floor has changed. This ground floor has changed. Now if I filter only for the floor, we can see there's been quite a lot of changes made to the floor. Primarily the name and the thickness, which is why we've had lots of replacements of rebar, and the host of course has changed for those pile caps. You can see via the model the floor's been selected, and we can now have a look at the effect of those changes. The volume of slab has now been changed, so it's not 522 anymore. Let's remove that link and take the volume off again. So let's take dimensions and volume. We can see we now have just under 740 cubic meters. Now the DPC will have changed ever so slightly as well. Even though the area hasn't changed, the thickness of that slab has changed. So we haven't got 1,829 anymore. So let's zero that to remove the link. Take it off. Well, apply the quantity posting again, should I say. Take that same formula from the template, and we can see by around 35 square meters the DPC has increased. Okay, in later examples we'll show you how this process can be done automatically. This highlights here that the change can be tracked down, and even though the change is made, everything is linked to the model, and of course the costs and quantities will have increased accordingly, allowing you to track your revisions and manage the changes that need to be made to the cost plan.